What your money would say. Andrew McNair. Money Talks. Are you listening? Money Talks. Are you listening? Money Talks. Are you listening? What your money would say with Andrew McNair.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair. Every Saturday from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, right here on WCOA 1370, I will be your retirement expert. My goal is to help navigate families through the rocky, unknown terrain that lies ahead in retirement. I started What Your Money Would Say in SWAN-Capital because I believe in what SWAN stands for. SWAN stands for Sleep Well at Night. And as a retiree, you've worked your entire life to get to this point. It's time for you to sleep well at night. Today's show, we're going to talk about estate planning. And I have the pleasure of bringing on a friend and a partner of mine, Reggie Rhodes, who's an elder law attorney in Dothan, Alabama. Now, Reggie, don't worry, is not going to charge you for this consultation, but we're going to have a fireside chat where we're going to talk about estate planning and how you can get better prepared. Give us a call at SWAN-Capital, 850-380-9558, and we work with Reggie on building that estate planning, because if you try to meet with an attorney, then meet with your financial advisor, they never work together. They have to be synergistic. Now, before we get to my featured speaker, I want to share with you an article that I saw. It was from PBS, and it has a great headline. It's called The Retirement Gamble. And sadly, I see so many families just roll the dice when it comes to retirement. And there's so many life hazards that could really wreck your plan if you're not prepared for them. The first one is debt. Debt can become a huge burden that we don't really feel initially, but over time, we really feel the effects. It's kind of like canoeing. You know, you might have a small leak in your canoe and you don't really worry about it, but as the water level rises, then we start to realize it when it's about ankle deep. Now, a lot of people try to treat the symptoms. They try to pail water, but that's not the root problem. You got to fix the leak, and that's what we help families do. The next one is not having enough money for retirement. That's why people took so much risk in the recession, because they didn't save enough money and they didn't have enough money saved. I want you to, and this may sound very controversial, I want you to get that out of your head, that there's a retirement number. The press is just pushed this so hard. What's your retirement number? Is it $1 million, $2 million? That's bogus. You need to find out what your retirement income need is. Is it $20,000 in conjunction with your pensions and your social securities? That's what you need to focus on. Having a secure retirement means an income that you can never outlive, that's guaranteed, that adjusts with inflation. So you need to focus on your retirement need. I think it's a tragedy that only 5% of families can retire on their own resources. They're dependent on a government. They're dependent on an institution that pays them a pension. It's time for you to take your financial freedom in your own hands. The next is health. We can't control health, but we can prepare by having health insurance and the right amount of long-term care insurance. The last is taxes. Taxes don't always happen. It doesn't all come to an end at April 15th. You have to do tax planning throughout the year. And the last one is death. We don't know when our last breath is, but we need to be prepared to make sure our family is well taken care of when that time does happen. And that's through adequate life insurance or self-funding, which never seems to be able to happen for a lot of families. So those are some of life's financial hazards. If you're worried about that and you want to make sure that you're covered, I implore you to please call SWAN-Capital, 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. And we'll go over this. We'll go through a checklist and look at your financial hazards. And we're not going to poke fun at you. We're not going to say, oh, you got to change this, you got to do that. No, we're going to be sit down with you and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? How we can plug some of these leaks in your boat. All right. I've brought in the best expert I can find, and his name is Reggie Rhodes. He's an elder law attorney in Dothan, Alabama. Reggie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andrew, thank you.
Reggie, will you share with everyone and our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do in your practice?
I have been practicing law for about 20 years, and I concentrate in the areas of estate planning and elder law planning and real estate. So I've had the good fortune of helping a number of people over my 20 years of practice and find it very rewarding.
Absolutely. I'm sure you deal with a lot of individuals in a very important time in their life as they prepare for, that other part of life, the part where we'll be a lot more dead for a lot longer. So that transition. Now, what I've always heard with estate planning is kind of that quote, if you will. It's not people fail at estate planning, they fail to plan. Share with us what a good basic plan would look like.
Well, Andrew, you're correct in that there are a lot of people, and I see a lot of people that are approaching retirement age that have never even put an estate plan into place. You can never get started too early with estate planning, and a good estate plan really consists of 4 basic documents. You have your general durable power of attorney, an advance directive for health care, which a lot of people call a living will.
Right.
Your will itself, and then a revocable trust. That is basically the cornerstone of a good estate plan.
We'll start with the will. Everyone's heard of a will.
A will is just someone's putting someone's wishes into writing, that what they want to see happen, whatever they pass. A will itself is a legal document. However, the will is not enforceable until it is admitted to probate. A lot of people think that, my mom or my dad had a will and this is what they want, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to divide it up. Well, what people don't realize is that will is not legally enforceable until it is admitted to probate, which is a court proceeding.
Yeah, and that probate, again, that's an elusive word itself. Could you go into depth about what is probate? What is that mystery?
Well, probate is where you take your last will and testament and to an attorney, and the attorney prepares documents to go along with that will, along with a copy of the death certificate, and we file those documents with the court. Okay,
a probate court.
It'd be a probate court, and once those documents are filed with the court, then it becomes part of public record. The court at that time will name a personal representative or an executor, if you will, over the estate. And that personal representative or executor is the one that has the authority to disperse and dispose of the assets of the estate and basically take control of the assets of the estate. They make sure that the personal representative makes sure that the terms of the will are abided by, that everything is distributed according to the terms of the will.
Also, they deal with any contesting, right?
Absolutely. If there is an heir or if there's someone who's left out of the will that may contest the validity of the will, the personal representative and the attorney representing the personal representative, you could have a court battle on your hands with regards to the legality of the instrument. Probate and probating a will it's a legal process that can be time consuming. It can be, it can actually, be a headache to deal with sometimes. It's a necessity whenever you have a will. It's something that has to be done.
With the will, I know everyone's like, well, I need to draw up a will, and that could be so true, because if you don't draw up a will, I tell people, you already have one. You might not have drew it up, but the state's already written one if you don't. And typically people don't want their assets and their things distributed by some government politician that, said it need to go this way.
That's correct. Almost, the United States has adopted what's called the Uniform Probate Code. And every state in the country has adopted some form of the Uniform Probate Code. And each probate code of each state is specific to that state. So, for example, the Alabama probate code is a little bit different than the Florida probate code. But only in, maybe certain time frames or certain things that are just specific to each state. If one does not have a will and one passes away without a will, the state in which that person resided in at the time that they passed has laws that determines how their property is distributed and who it's distributed to. But even at that, one of the heirs has to step up and do what we call an administration of an estate. You're not probating the will, but you do have to administer the estate, and that is in itself is also a court proceeding. So the law of the state in which the person lived at the time that he passed is going to control how his property is distributed to his heirs.
We talked about a will in pretty good detail. Share with us the living will.
A living will, we also refer to sometimes as an advance directive. What it is a legal document that basically where a person states what they want to happen in the event they're unable to make medical decisions regarding themselves. Normally speaking, we're talking about in cases of terminal illness or injury or permanent unconsciousness. And when you talk about terminal illness or injury, we're talking about if your attending physician and another physician have determined that you will not live longer than 6 months. So a living will addresses those very
touchy issues, to pull the plug, not to pull the plug.
Exactly, the very touchy issues. But a person has to make decisions of, in the event I'm in that position and I cannot make the decision myself. In other words, I'm in such a mental state that I can't make those decisions. Do I want life support? Do I want a feeding tube? Do I want my life prolonged by artificial measures? Even though the ultimate result is going to be that I pass away.
Right. And you just don't want to assume that the person that you're entrusting just knows what you want to happen. So if you draw it all out, they have a guide to go by.
That's exactly right. And in the case of the living will, if you're in a hospital or if you're presented to the hospital, if you're, you find yourself in that situation and you do not have a living will, the doctors are going to do everything they can to prolong your life for as long as possible. So, you may have a feeding tube and you may have life support and they might be able to keep you on life support with a feeding tube for a period of time.
Which you may or not wanted unless you spelled it out.
Exactly right. And can be painful. Can be painful for the family, to watch a loved one pass in that manner. Those are some very serious issues that many people need to address and need to think about.
The power of attorney, I deal with that a lot of times, and a lot of families assume that their power of attorney was going to do this, and it was cut short because it didn't have the right language in it or wasn't done properly. So if you'll share with our listeners the power of attorney and how crucial that document is to have and know what it does.
When we talk about a power of attorney, we generally talk about a general, durable power of attorney. Now, the word general means that the power of attorney basically encompasses a lot of different powers. So that the person that you give the power of attorney to, can basically make decisions with regard, take over, checking accounts, savings accounts, can basically do everything that you can do. Now, durable, the word durable in that title means that power of attorney continues even though you may become incompetent. So it continues on until some point in time in the future where either you void the power of attorney or you pass away. So a power of attorney is very important. For example, heaven forbid, let's say that you have a husband and wife, and the husband is on the road and he's involved in a significant car accident. And there is no power of attorney that he's given to the wife to basically take care of family business. And there were certain things that were just in the husband's name.
Right, which could happen to any of us anytime.
Which can happen to any at any time. So By giving the spouse a general durable power of attorney, that spouse now can go and access checking accounts, savings accounts, money markets, investments, those types of things that the family might need for support while the husband is or the injured spouse is in the hospital and recovering.
There's a lot of families out there that may that didn't get a power of attorney that they're suffering with not only the recovery of the person they love, but they can't access any financial funds to pay for hospital bills, odd bills that pay through just monthly expenses. And without having that document, you could be very limited.
You can be, and also it's a very important document. And one thing that people need to consider with power of attorneys too, and I see this a lot, is let's say that one of the spouses, let's say the wife has a spouse, has a power of attorney for her spouse. And let's say that the husband is involved in a car accident and he eventually passes away. What people also have to realize too is that power of attorney is only good, while the granting party is still alive. So if the granting party passes, that power of attorney is no longer any good. But it is a very valuable document that is an important part of a complete estate plan for everyone.
Now, that complete estate plan, I think the last one we didn't cover is the trust. And there's multiple different trusts, and trust is such a big word. And many people say, well, I heard of a trust, and they have lots of different views. And if you'll kind of strain that out and simplify it.
Well, exactly. There are, I tell people that there are more different types of trust than we have fingers and toes. But basically you can boil it down into two different types of trust. You have a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. And the trust that would fit 99% of the people out there is the revocable trust. With a revocable trust, when it is set up and you put assets in the revocable trust, you're basically taking the property out of your name.
Why would someone do that?
Well, they do it for a number of different reasons. Number one would be to bypass probate. Let's say if a couple sets up a revocable trust and they put all of their assets in the revocable trust, and then something happens to one of the parties. Well, the surviving spouse does not have to run and have a will probated because there's nothing in the decedent's probate estate. It's all in the trust. And the trust determines how the property is distributed. So the main reason why people set up trust is to bypass probate.
Okay.
Which can, probate can be very, as we talked about before, costly and lengthy.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason to set up trust, and now we're not talking about necessarily revocable, but also irrevocable trust, is for tax planning purposes. Trust can be very useful in tax planning for estate planning. So, but the trust that I was referring to with that basic estate plan is the revocable trust. And a qualified estate planner can explain to a client the need for a revocable trust and how a revocable trust will benefit them in their certain situation.
From my personal experience, when I describe, trust, a lot of families believe that once money goes into a trust, you can no longer get it out again.
Well, that's not true. That is what a lot of people believe, and we get a lot of questions with regards to that. Once I put this asset into this trust, will I be able to access it? Well, the one thing about a revocable trust is absolutely you can access it, and we can draft irrevocable trusts where property can be accessed maybe indirectly through certain individuals. But with the revocable trust, because it is revocable, the grantor can revoke the trust at any time and grab the assets within the trust and bring them back into the probate estate. He can also access the assets that are in the trust, leave the trust intact, but be able to access the assets that are within the trust for personal for personal use. So trusts can be, if properly drafted, trusts are very flexible and can be very, very useful for families, both small and large.
Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of times I explain trust to families because they say, well, who manages the money? Once I put my money into a trust, is it just going to this black hole? Is it kind of a chest that sometimes I can open? What I explain to them is basically a trust is almost like another human being, but it doesn't have a pulse. I mean, it has its own tax ID number, and depending on how you write the trust,
What your money would say.
it does it's almost a human being that does everything it needs to do. So if you say, well, spend all these monies on their care, it'll do that. And it does all the other great advantages that a trust can do for you.
You're exactly right, Andrew. And a lot of times I kind of use the analogy of a business. When people who own business own a business is a separate legal entity. And it's recognized by the IRS as a separate entity because it has its own separate tax ID number. Well, trust can be set up in the exact same way. Now, the one thing that the difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust is this. A revocable trust, because it is revocable, does not have to have its own separate tax ID number. You actually can use the Social Security number of the grantor as the tax ID number for the trust. Because the trust itself in a revocable trust would not have to file a tax return. An irrevocable trust, on the other hand, will have its own separate tax ID number and will have to file its own separate tax return. It's its own separate entity, and it's kind of like owning a business. And you can look at the trustee as the manager of the business.
That's a good analogy. That kind of simplifies it.
With revocable trust, very flexible. The grantor can access the assets within the trust at any time without limitation. With an irrevocable trust, we set it up just like it were a business, has its own separate tax ID number, and a properly drafted irrevocable trust can still benefit the beneficiaries of the trust, and the grantor can also be able to access some of the assets of the trust indirectly.
There's another section I wanted to talk to you while I have you here, Reggie, is titling. Now, titling affects everyone. How you title your house, how you title your car, and that can add another layer of protection for you. It's not foolproof by any means, but it can add an extra layer of protection if you title assets correctly. Could you kind of go over the do's and don'ts of titling?
Clients that I meet with, I can tell them, I can sit down and tell them that, listen, if you want, and if I do my job correctly, we can actually title the assets of what they own in such a way that when they pass, those assets automatically go to beneficiaries, and everything bypasses probate. So it's very important that your house, your automobile, your checking accounts, your savings accounts, those types of things are titled appropriately. So that we don't fall into a situation where one passes and all of a sudden one of the heirs comes up and says, oh, Mom had a car. What do we do with this car? I'm going to try to sell this car. And they can't sell it because the title was just in Mom's name.
Right, which puts the family in a bind.
Now they have to go and probate the estate just to be able to sell the car. And, then you have to go through that long, arduous process. So if things are titled appropriately, we can actually set up an estate that would automatically pass to the beneficiaries without the need of probate.
And that'd be huge for a lot of families. Now, Reggie, every person's situation is different. And how would someone get in contact with you if they wanted to, build that basic plan and maybe even look into a trust if it made sense for them? How would they get in contact with you?
Well, I'll just be honest with you, Andrew. Probably one of the best ways to get in touch with me is through you. If they'll call Andrew McNair, they'll be able to get in touch with me.
Sure, because we work hand in hand all the time.
Absolutely, we do. And we service clients. I service clients all over the country. I've had clients in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, as far away as California, and deal with companies as far away as Alaska.
Wow.
So, the first thing that I would say is to contact Andrew McNair, and we would get in touch with me through you.
And that brings a whole nother topic, because if a lot of people, they go to one specialist, they'll go to their property casualty person, they'll go to their attorney, they'll go to their insurance person, they go to their investment person, and they never really have a head coach to really pull it all together. So when you're able to pull the retirement planning, the investments, and pull it towards the estate planning, pull it together and go with a game plan and pull in every player, it can really have really great results. So if you want to learn more about building a basic plan or learn more about trust, call SWAN-Capital at 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Visit us on the web at swan-capital.com. Thanks again, Reggie, for stopping by and
what your money would say. Today's financial landscape can be rough. One of the most important aspects of planning is choosing the right guide to help you navigate the road to retirement. Andrew McNair and the team at SWAN-Capital is dedicated to providing the very best service in the retirement planning industry today. SWAN-Capital is a full-service independent wealth management firm dedicated to providing guaranteed custom income plans that you cannot outlive. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. The difference between SWAN-Capital and you retire once. We help people retire every day. You should be enjoying your retirement years, not letting worry keep you up at night. SWAN-Capital. Sleep well at night. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Again, that's 850-380-9558.
The Veteran Benefit Project, founded by Andrew McNair, president of SWAN-Capital, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans and widows of veterans with long-term care expenses by qualifying for the VA's Aid and Attendance Benefit. Learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA towards long-term health care. There is absolutely no fee associated with our assistance to the veteran, the widow of a veteran, their families, or any retirement community. Our goal is to preserve the dignity of the veteran and to reduce the dependency on the Medicaid system. Again, learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA. Contact the Veteran Benefit Project 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. 850-380-5137. Look us up on the web, veteranbenefitproject.com. At the Veteran Benefit Project, we are committed to helping you secure the benefits you deserve.
Retirement expert Andrew McNair. Changing the retirement paradigm. Now back to what your money would say. Brought to you by SWAN-Capital.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Reggie Rhodes, our partner elder law attorney, as we talked about estate planning and probate issues. Again, if you're wondering if you have a solid estate plan, or you might have drafted your will or a trust 10, 15 years ago, and you want someone to look at it, to update it, I have your guy. If you want to get in contact with Reggie Rhodes, give us a call at SWAN-Capital, 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. I also want to share with you some upcoming events. At my nonprofit organization, the Veteran Benefit Project, where you can look at veteranbenefitproject.com, where we help educate families on how to receive up to $24,000 a year tax-free from the VA to help pay for assisted living and home health care expenses. We're having some workshops coming up, so check out swan-capital.com under the upcoming events tab to RSVP now. Thank you for stopping by today's show, and I look forward to speaking with you next week on Saturday, 12:30 to 1 o'clock, right here on What Your Money Would Say. See you next week.